John Paul Morosi mentioned Yandy Diaz as a potential option for the Mariners. If Yandy Diaz is available, they need to go get him, and they need to go get him right now.
You're putting me in a good mood really quick, because I was sitting doing my Jonathan India prep yesterday, getting ready for the show we're recording here. And I was sitting there just looking through all his numbers. I'm like, man, I do not want any part of this guy. I thought that before I started my prep. I thought even more so that after my prep. But man, Yandy Diaz. Yandy fucking Diaz. I couldn't have said it any better. He's out there. I would give up a whole lot to go get him. He has 2 years of control. He is one of the best bats in all of baseball. If the Rays are, for whatever reason, dangling his name out there, go get him, Jerry. Go trade what you have to trade to go get that guy on this team, because that is a difference maker.
The reasoning that he would be available is Morosi reported, he went on Seattle Sports today or yesterday, and he said, I quote, I believe the Rays are in the market to move some position players in an effort to get less expensive pitching. Wow, who has less expensive pitching? I could wonder. Like, it almost seems too good to be true, because the Mariners have dirt cheap pitching that they could easily prepare to offload, and that pitching that the Rays don't want to spend on, the Mariners could spend and replace it. And they can get a corner infielder who does everything they want. You know what Yandy Diaz does? Like, sure, he hits for a high average. This man gets on base over 40% of the time. He slugged over 500 this season, an OPS of 932. Still hit 22 home runs, but he did this all while striking out just 15% of the time, walking 11% of the time, with a 164 WRC plus, and plays two positions which you desperately need more of from next year. He plays first and he plays third. He was a primary first baseman last year for the Tampa Bay Rays. And if they could get this guy at fucking first base next season, this is a fucking needle mover. This is what we're talking about right here.
You can hear the tones in our voices. Mariners go trade for Yandy Diaz. We will be sitting here on this podcast saying, let's fucking go, Jerry. I mean, we're talking about a guy who started at first base in the All-Star game this year, in Yandy Diaz. Like, can you read that WRC plus number for me again? Can you just do that for Yandy Diaz?
164.
164. 64% above league average. Here are a couple names, TJ, who he ranked ahead of this year in WRC plus. Freddie Freeman, Matt Olson, Juan Soto, and Bryce Harper. I'm going to say the same line that I said in our social clip about Yandy Diaz here today on Thursday. How do you like them apples?
What puzzles me the most here is how is he available? The Rays are really incredible for the payroll they currently run, right? It's in the bottom 4 of baseball. They're like, oh, we need a new stadium. We need more people in the gates. That's why we have such a low payroll. We can't generate enough revenue. They come out with a new stadium plan that puts it right next to the current Trop. So it solves none of the issues. So they're going to continue trading away, if this happens, really good players who are at a reasonable age. Yandy Diaz last season was 31 years old. And Yandy Diaz, you mentioned he has 2 years of control left. He actually has 3, because there's a club option in 2026. So, I mean, I'm dead. Like, he's currently on a 3-year, $24 million deal, which bought out his arbitration with a club year for an extra year. So, like, the deal is he's supposed to make $10 million, or I think it's $8 million in 2024, $10 million in 2025, and a club option for $12 million in 2026 for an all-star starter. I don't even understand how the Rays look at this and like, man, this is too much money. I don't understand that. I don't know why they would ever trade this guy. But man, I mean, it works in the Mariners' favor in so much. If the Mariners are going to be cheap this offseason and they don't actually have the budget, well, this is your guy, because he doesn't cost anything. This would be a dream. I know this is just going to leave us disappointed now, too, because we've painted the picture of how this would really be too good to be true.
Jerry's talked so much about wanting contact bats and cutting down on strikeouts. And a lot of the time when you hear that, especially when I heard that, I think to myself, oh God, they're going to get a bunch of slap hitting outfielders that hit for a lick of power, don't put up much in the WRC plus category. And I'm thinking, oh God. But then you hear Yandy Diaz, and a guy that is one of the most impactful hitters in the game right now, along with the fact he does not strike out almost at all, and he walks a ton. What a fit. Along with the fact the Mariners desperately need help at the corner infield spots, that would be unreal. I mean, the more you dig into Yandy Diaz, the more you can fall in love with him. Because I start looking at his pitch-by-pitch results from 2023. It's insanity. You know what drove most Mariner fans crazy this past year? How many guys would flail out at all those sweepers and just swing and miss at pitches way out of the zone? Yandy Diaz crushes breaking balls. Like, he hits the absolute shit out of breaking balls. You know what he did against sweepers this year? The guy hit 455 with a 591 slug against sweepers. Oh, it gets better. It gets better. Because that's what he did against sweepers. Against curveballs, he hit 512 with an 884 slug against curveballs, all while still slugging 511 against fastballs. There was not a single pitch on his Baseball Savant page that says, oh, Yandy Diaz really has issues with this offering. The more you dig into this guy, like, aside from the fact he doesn't play very good defense, which, great, he's going to play first base. Like, you can live with it. Aside from that, it's hard not to just fall in love with this guy and the idea of trading for him.
I'll continue to say these type of players are not often available. They are not. Like, when Lyle mentions going out and getting more contact, and we're like, oh, well, we know what a contact hitter looks like. They're usually smaller. They're usually don't hit for a whole lot of power, and their impact on the offensive game is usually minimal, because the guys who both hit for power and hit for contact, you know what they are? They're very highly paid and usually not up for auction at a trade. They're usually not available. But this could potentially be a rare scenario where they actually are.
Here are guys who hit for power and control the strike zone. Oh, off the top of my head, Aaron Judge, Jordan Alvarez, Shohei, Corey Seager, Juan Soto. Yeah, who may actually be
also available. Yeah.
Which is funny because most of the time these guys are not. But players like that, you usually don't have a chance to acquire him. And the fact he is even being floated out there by the Rays is unbelievable. And for two teams that make a lot of trades in the Reds and Mariners that clearly seem to have some needs on each of the opposite ends here, man, it would be intriguing. Okay, now I'm going to throw out what this package would look like. And look, this is probably going to be a lot, but I'll throw it to you first. If you had to put together a Yandy Diaz trade package, what is it?
Well, I know they would not include Logan Gilbert. I think Logan Gilbert is off the table. Jerry said, per Morosi's report, he said, if the Rays settled on Logan Gilbert and only said we'll only take Logan Gilbert, the Mariners would say no in this trade, which makes sense. Again, Yandy Diaz. If Yandy Diaz was 27, different conversation. 28, different. This is a different conversation. But Yandy Diaz is over 30 at this point, so you don't give up Logan Gilbert for that. I have no problem giving up Bryce Miller or Brian Wu, whichever one they want. Like, that's fine. Give them one of them. And then you'll probably give up another top prospect as well. A top prospect, a hitter. Harry Ford, Cole Young, one of the first-round picks, potentially, if they like one of those a lot. And then you'd probably throw in a couple fillers that you'd want. And I think that would get it done. Again, you're buying 3 years of control at plus 30, and he plays a non-premium position. So that would probably get it done.
It's probably going to be Wu. If it was between Wu or Miller, especially because the Rays are so tuned in on analytics, similar to the way the Mariners are, and Brian Wu and everything about him just jumps off the charts, it would probably be Wu, right? That's probably fair to say.
Yeah.
So, Wu, do you think it costs one of Cole Young or Harry Ford for sure? Could it be? I'm just thinking the fact that you're talking about a guy who's going to be a 32-year-old first baseman. Like, could it be Gabby Gonzalez instead? Could you get a little further down the prospect rankings if you're going to include Wu, who's 6 years of club control, who has 6 years of club control to his belt?
You potentially could, or they might want a lottery ticket like a Felnine Celestin, which I don't think the Mariners would want to move.
Yeah.
But he is not a top 100 prospect. I don't even think he's 18 yet. That's a true lottery ticket that they could potentially want. And then that could end right there, right? You give a proven big league starter and a lottery ticket for Yandy Diaz. Again, a first baseman, non-premium position. Or you could fill out with a couple of your 6 to 10 prospects. Maybe if you were more comfortable with a Lazaro Montes, another lottery ticket, non-premium position thumper in the minor leagues who, could turn into a Josh Fields situation. You never know. We know how that worked out for the Dodgers, but those are the types of prospects that you might have to throw in the end, because that's the area Gabby Gonzalez is in.
So maybe, how about this? Woo, Gabby Gonzalez, Johnny Farmelo, something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
Okay. So yeah, look, the Mariners aren't going to give up nothing. Yandy Diaz is a top 5 hitter in baseball for a reason after what he did in 2023. So it would cost a decent amount, but I would do it. I would do it to go get him. That's for sure.
Yeah, I would too. I hope the Rays follow through on this. Mariners and Rays have now made 14. They've made 14 trades all time. Shout out to Jordan Schusterman, friend of the pod, keeping track, making sure that all these be done. Number 15, if this were to be the case, I think you and I would be very happy. I mean, this would kick off the offseason. This would be a great start to the offseason. And to be honest, it feels a major, major hole. It leaves you with less pressure to be perfect with the rest of the roster if this turns out this way, right? Because you'd probably need to add one more bat. But it wouldn't have to be you wouldn't have to go get Juan Soto after this. You wouldn't have to. It would be nice to get Juan Soto, but you wouldn't have to. You could go maybe a little bit lower on the totem pole, whether it be a trade or a sign. And then, of course, you could always trade again when you potentially sign Blake Snell.
Can you imagine a scenario after all the bashing of the Mariners, after all the cries that they don't spend money, after all the outlash about the 54% stuff and doing fans a favor? Could you imagine, and I do this against our better judgment, if they had an offseason where they signed Shohei and traded for Yandy Diaz?
Sounds pretty good to me.
Yeah. I shouldn't even be putting that thought into people's heads, including our own, but now I'm sitting here thinking about it, being like, man, what an offseason that would be.
That solves your lineup problem right there.
Yep. Yes, it does. You talk about needing 2 bats. Those are 2 bats. Let's put it like that.
Those would be the 2 best bats on the market this offseason. Arguably. It probably depends where you rank Soto amongst that, if Soto gets moved.
You want a crazy, not that hot take? If the Mariners got those 2 guys, Julio potentially becomes the 3rd best bat in that lineup.
Potentially.
Yeah. Which is crazy to say, but yes.
And that's fine with me. If Julio Rodriguez is your 3rd best hitter, I think you're doing something right. And if this was the case and the Mariners could swing this, they would win back a lot of fan support. I think this would signal to the clubhouse they mean business. This would absolutely do that. And that's the biggest part of this offseason. You got to keep the trust of the guys on the outside of the organization and the inside of the organization